All right, folks, welcome back to the Uncle Wristlock Podcast. And I have my special guest for today is the Hitman, Jason Pittman, a legend in the local scene, MMA, and now Jiu-Jitsu coach, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. I'm excited for this conversation. When I went over to 503 West Coast Jiu-Jitsu and got back into MMA, Jason was my primary coach, and we're going to talk about MMA and Jiu-Jitsu, and specifically, we're going to focus on older grapplers in this episode. Grapplers that are over 40 and training smart and having longevity in the game. And then also some insights about coaching and starting Jiu-Jitsu. So welcome to the podcast, Jason.
Thanks for having me.
All right. So can you say a little bit about how you got involved in martial arts and got into MMA?
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy because like you, I mean, we're dinosaurs compared to these young guys. And people ask me when I started, and I got in, back in the day, boxing was like the combat sport. And
Right.
I always wanted to know how to fight, like be taught the X's and O's of it. And so there's a guy named Joe Banks, R.I.P. Joe, took me into, I think, what was it, Grand Avenue? They called it Pro Gym back then. It was 1994 when
Grand
I
Ave?
first went in
Yeah.
there.
Off
I think I was
MLK?
about the same age as my twins are right now when I first went in. And
Mm.
I just loved it. Every day, boxing is pretty regimented the way they train, and just about, I mean, it's way different than the way, like I teach or it's taught now. People would be bored, the way they did it then. I mean, we got in there, you go every day. We'd run 3-4 miles, come back, shadow box like 5-6 rounds, do your abs, do your push-ups, 6 or 7, bag rounds. And then if one of the coaches was available, they're making you throw 8 million jabs.
Yeah, man. I
And then,
remember when my MMA coach, Greg Piper,
I remember Greg, rest in peace, Greg.
started training over at Grand, and, footwork
Yeah,
just for rounds. Like,
yeah.
yeah, like today's
Weird, like
training, you'd be
monotonous
bored.
stuff that's like boring, and you can't. I don't coach the younger guys that way these days because they ain't feeling it. Now, if you're doing privates with me, I make you do a bit of that. But yeah, I mean, people don't go to the gyms for that now, But if you look at the old boxers, and even not as much Muay Thai, but like it's Muay Thai, just stand in front of each other and kick each other in half. But some of the really skilled MMA guys over the years, some of our better strikers, footwork, But yeah, I went from boxing. I didn't have any matches. I was going to, but I was young and, just being a 22-year-old in the 90s. And then, gosh, probably 4 or 5 years later, I found jiu-jitsu. And you remember back in those days, late 90s, it was just kind of like guard, arm bar, triangle, rear naked choke. Who's the other one? Kimura from guard. That's kind of it, flower sweep.
Fundamentals.
Yeah, basic fundamentals, rinse, wash, repeat. Classes were coached back then were completely different. There wasn't really like, mat police like what we do now. We're making sure people aren't hurting themselves and each other. It was just kind of a free-for-all. But did that for a while.
Where was that?
That was at old SBG, the one over there on
Mm.
MLK.
Yeah.
Coach Thornton was there. And then, Robert Follis was my main coach because I like to go, even then I like to train in the morning in daytime. And, he was there. And then when Robert left, I think I'd hurt my neck or something. And I was out for a few weeks, came back and he was gone. Turned out he was out at Quest. And that's when they first got going. They still had that dealership there. Remember
Right.
you go in the back and they're working on cars?
That's where I started training with Robert. Yeah. When he came over. Yeah.
So Robert was my coach and I just really dug him. Like, I learned a lot about coaching from him because, he was the king of analogies, to help you understand, bridge the gap. And, was doing that, kind of off and on. Your standard issue, newer guy, because I was lifting a lot more back then, and I didn't understand that I can't like lift like a bodybuilder and be a good jiu-jitsu player at the same time. And I didn't want to listen either. And I remember Randy Couture's in there one day and, he's kind of working around on the facility. And I said, "Hey, Randy," I said, "Hey, so what's your lifting regimen? Like, do you go heavy or whatever?" And I remember he was very serious. He's like, the way I lift is to make sure that I can hit a guy as hard in the 5th round as I do in the 1st round. I was like, "Oh, okay, noted." But, I was kind of in and out of it. I wasn't really committed like you see some of our younger guys are now. again, kind of took a little bit of a hiatus, and I was down at the gym wearing an old Team Quest, we went to the weight room wearing an old Team Quest t-shirt and bump into a dude. And he's like, oh man, we trained at the same class. And he had a really nice house up in the West Hills, and his whole basement was matted out. So those guys would train every Tuesday night,
Oh, okay.
and they invited me over there. So I was training with those guys for a while. And, kind of got to a point where I kind of, I want a little bit more, I want to learn. We were just training, we were just rolling, and they were getting a guy ready, did a little bit of stand up, but they're all kind of grapplers. I was way ahead of stand up as far as those guys went. They were getting a guy ready for a fight. And so I was basically, promoted to the unofficial striking coach. And really, when
Yeah.
I think back then, I didn't know anything. I'd had rounds underneath my belt and some traditional training, but I mean, that was like 20,000 rounds ago. You know what I'm saying? So, I was helping those guys, and we would go to the fight, and, our dude lost. When I think back the way he was trained, yeah, he should have lost. And he was in the wrong weight class, everything like that,
Mm.
But the team that won was Kurt's gym, Kurt Crawford. And so at our old house, I saw the sign at Kurt's, and I didn't connect the dots. And I knew Kurt from just, around, right? And
When
I
he
go
had
in
his
there one day.
gym on Halsey or
His
82nd?
first one over on 82nd, over by where
Yeah.
Elmer's used to be.
Yeah, yeah.
It was right over there. I don't even, I think that building's bulldozed down now.
Hmm.
But you'd go in, you walk down to the basement, bang, there's Kurt. And that's really where the MMA started for me. That's where I met Chris Standing, Trent Standing, Ryan Hart was there. Ryan's out at I think the base. It's good to see him back in it these days. Well, he's been back at it for a while now. Boy, who else? Marquis Morrison, Evan Tanner was middleweight champion at the time. And so it was kind of like push you into the deep end of the pool. And in those days, it wasn't like, all right, we're gonna drill clinch. It was just kind of get in there and just go for it. And then you're
And
learning
just
on
do
the fly.
rounds.
Yeah. And we stood there. So Kurt had probably a quarter of a cage, maybe. He had the cage wall, but it was like, whoa, this guy's got cage walls. Back then, guys were training on mats in their garage. And I remember me and like three other guys standing there, and Evan he'd have the boxing headgear on. And I never really asked why he had it on. I think Kurt told me he did it because it made it harder for him to breathe. Because, Evan certainly wasn't worried about getting punched. Like, Evan was one of the toughest guys I'd ever, like, durable, tough dude. And, he didn't like to go, he never put the clock on. So he just sit there and beat the shit out of us. Can I say shit? He beat the crap out of us. He'd sit there like, all right, Jay, you're in. I'd get in there, and and Evan had one gear. He'd have the big 16-ounce gloves on, and we're doing MMA rounds with big 16-ounce gloves on. And all right, you're in, and you just go for a while. And he was just, he one gear, which was 100%. But I never thought anything about it. I was like, whoa, this is really cool, man. Like, I'm going with the
no
middleweight
round
champ.
timer. Yeah, no round timer. You're training for pride.
Old school. I think about how
you're training
old school
for
that
the 10,
was.
20-minute rounds.
That wouldn't fly. Like, you'd have no members if you train people like that now. But I remember he kept taking me down, and I said, hey, how do you stop that? He said, oh, Evan had a really great voice, greater than mine even. He said, oh, you put the hand right there. And he's the first guy to show me a crossface on the fly. Yeah, you do that, put your leg back. He won't like that anymore. You stand him up and circle off the fence and just start hitting him, and they kind of, all right. So the next go, I was defending a couple takedowns, and that was my first introduction to crossface and all that. But our team just grew and grew and grew, and we'd just go down there at a certain time, and guys would always do, all right, tonight it's big gloves and shins, and we're doing 1,000,000 stand-up rounds. Oh, okay, tonight you go in, and you didn't really even know, you just show up, and all right, you had your gear, and all right, little gloves, and everyone's zillion rounds, all right, and that's kind of how it went. And then guys are fighting, and I was like, well, yeah, I kind of want to fight.
How old were you then?
31, 32. I had my first fight at 32.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Relatable.
Which is old for today's standard, right?
I think I was 30, 31 with first fight as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Isn't that weird?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's old man for today's standard.
Since we're remembering Evan, I'll share a story about Evan. The first week that he came out to Oregon to train at Team Quest and live out here, he taught a class subbing for Greg, and there was like 2 or 3 of us.
Yeah.
And he taught us arm triangle. So I learned the kata gatami, 20 years ago from Evan, because he had won a couple MMA fights with that. So that was his signature technique. So he's like, what should I teach? I'm going to teach you the arm triangle. And what was funny is I'm 90% sure he told us that like he learned that technique from VHS on his own. right?
So I bought this Mario Sperry VHS. It was like Mario Sperry, and like
Vale Tudo, number
Valley
one.
Tudo.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
he's
yeah.
basically showing you like how to ground and pound. And I remember you grab here and you punch him in his face. No matter
Yeah,
what, you punch him here, then you come back and punch him in his
yeah,
face. But I'm like,
yes.
whoa. But I picked up some tricks, like how to go body head, from the Mario Sperry
There's so
VHS.
much solid MMA technique
Yeah,
from him.
100%.
So much. Yeah. Yeah. But so that was the training back in the day. Just lots of live rounds.
Live rounds,
Survive.
which and you hear, right, like the MMA guys now, like I know Cerrone was very popular for saying he didn't do rounds
Mm,
before fights towards the end, and
yeah.
honestly, I'm in the opposite thought of that, like
Okay.
any other sport, right? Basketball, football, baseball, you're scrimmaging. I hooped up to junior college and you're always scrimmaging. You're always playing, and so I never regretted like towards the end of my fight career, I could feel the camps and everyone who's ever trained at 503 West Coast Jiu-Jitsu knew that we banged, right? Like we'd go pretty much full speed with big gloves. Not all the time, but pre-fight, that was very, the last 3 weeks of camp, there was, there were extremely tough days. And I don't regret any of that because any fight that was a discipline that we always had in our back pocket, right? Where it's like, all right, if this guy might be a grappler or this guy might be a striker, whatever. But conditioning was always important to me. That was, to me, I still tell guys that's a discipline. People think it's always jujitsu, boxing, Muay Thai, and wrestling. Well, no, you have your conditioning. That's a discipline. And then the other discipline that I had always had in my back pocket, I thought, was I can bang, right? I'm used to banging every day with these dudes. And so this guy's not going to be able to do that. It was always in my mind. I always felt at peace with like, we
Mm.
can always bang, and Breaker's like, bro, hey, you know the deal, dude. If it ever gets crazy, you can bang. He'd always say that.
Explain a little for listeners who Breaker is.
Nick Breaker. So Breaker is about my height, about 6'4". When back those days, he was pretty lean and mean at about 220, and he shoots a shoestring single like nobody's business, man. Like the dude, I always tell him he was like that cartoon Tigger, how he'd always spring into action. Breaker would shoot that shoestring, and then he also liked the head and arm toss. Like he would throw everybody with that, like, and just boom, land on you.
I remember Nick. So he started training Kempo karate when he was 14 with his twin brother
Yeah.
at the Kempo school. And I remember when he and his brother were wrestling at Madison, and he kept telling me that he would like drill that head and arm toss in the air, and people thought he was crazy. Like, what are you doing? Like, that's not a good technique. But he stubbornly like drilled that technique, and that was like a good technique for him.
Yeah, I see him hit it on like everybody, like
Yeah.
literally every like guys that were high tier wrestlers. And he had the right physique for it, and yeah, and then Nick, he went down and trained with Brian Espinoza at West Coast and in California, the original West Coast Jiu Jitsu, and that's where we got our affiliation from. But
Tell
Brian's a
tell
black
tell
belt under the Hickson Gracie.
Yes, tell us more about Brian Espinoza and any key jujitsu lessons that you got from him. How does it
I
affect your
was just telling
jujitsu?
this story when I taught class today. Taught some clinch earlier, which
Okay.
I don't get a chance to teach as much anymore, so I'm like always drooling. I'm like, we're doing clinch. You guys need to know some clinch. What I shared was Brian, for starters, Brian's a Hickson Gracie black belt. I think he's fourth, almost fifth degree now. He should be a fifth degree, I believe. He's worn his black belt a million years. And then he would come down and satellite, do seminars for us. And it was really our only, back in the day, there was probably 6 black belts in all of the greater Portland metropolitan area, maybe Southwest Washington included. And so he would come to town and then I would go down there, or we would go down there, drive to LA, which is insane. I'd never drive to LA ever again. But I don't know why we did that. But he showed me all, Brian's got very good, solid, fundamental stuff that he shows that some of the stuff I still use to this day. But in this particular fighting a dude, and it was the second time I fought him, and we thought we had him out of there round 1. Ref called a low blow on me, and I'm like, all right, whatever. It's an MMA match. Maybe I did hit him there. So he had his 5 minutes, And he took almost all 5 minutes too. You know, they stand you in the neutral corner. And I would always just try to sit there and not think about anything, you know, that's happened in a few fights where you're just kind of like, all right, go over to this neutral corner. And just try to just sit there and like the fight's about to happen, stay locked in. Well, time in, he comes in, guns a-blazing, of course, right? Because knew I just almost had him out of there. Splits my, you know, I always held a high guard anyways, but he split my guard with the elbow. He just came over. My shoulders aren't flexible enough to do that, but wow, hits me
The
right
downward
here.
elbow.
Kind of rocks me a little bit, but you know, old Uncle Adrenaline. And again, that goes back to all the banging we did. Because I remember thinking like, yeah, but I get hit harder than this in practice by fist. But I knew by the way it landed that I'm either cut or I'm swelling up fast, and I got to get him out of there. And I hear the crowd kind of go, and so because I kind of circled and I go off, and we're in like a small cage, like a 15, 16 footer, like a phone booth, right?
Yeah.
And so
So you're gonna go toe to toe, and you're
so
gonna
I
get him
grab
out of
him
there.
and just run him against the fence into our corner
Mm.
and bang, 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 you know, playing my whole, you know, my clinch game, you know, striking stuff in there. We get him all the way down, and I get to his back and I start going for the choke, get him out of it. Because again, I'm like, we're getting pretty close to this round being over. And I'm like, I can feel this forehead. I'm like, I don't want to go to round two. I don't know if I was cut, but I knew
Is
something.
this is a 2-round fight? Is this
It's a
at
3-round.
Rumble?
Yeah, it's a
Or
pro
3?
fight.
Okay.
3-5. But I know, like, you know, he clipped me with that elbow, so I'm like, I gotta get him out of there. And I go here to finish the choke, you know, my normal, you know, your normal rear naked choke, and he peels the top hand. But Brian Espinoza showed me to grab
A short
a
choke.
grip and ratchet your own arm past his guard, and then, you know, apply the choke again. And that's what I did, got him out of there. So apparently after the fight, he came up to Breaker, you know, who's my corner. I said, bro, what did he do? He was like, man, I defended the choke and everything. He still got me. And Breaker goes, that's that Brian Espinoza-ish.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
And it was. Brian always had, I mean, really, if we were still having fighters, I've never seen someone so good with how he integrates strong jiu-jitsu positions and adds striking in there. I'm like, whoa, like I learned a lot, you know, watching a lot of the stuff that he shows. Yeah. And he's still solid. He's still in great shape.
Yeah.
Still a solid jiu player.
Yeah, I remember Brian was the first black belt I had a chance to roll with, right?
Right.
And so back in the day, right? You know, what is this? 16 years ago, so, like there's not very many black belts, right?
No.
And so I'm like, oh, man, this is gonna be amazing.
Yeah, I
He
can't
must
do
have
anything
tapped
against this guy.
he must have tapped me like 10 or 12 times in a round with monoplata and maybe north south choke, because he
That's
had a lot of
right.
Marcelo Garcia game, and underhook side control, underhook half guard was like, you know, money for me, but he just kept mounting me in monoplata, hitting me with the monoplata. I just remember that was like an amazing experience
Yeah,
to
I
roll with
mean,
a legit black belt,
I
Hickson black
tell the
belt.
guys,
Yeah.
the younger guys at the gym, I'm like, and it's kind of like, I always say it's kind of like when my grandma, you know, she passed away in 2012 at 94 years old, but I remember her telling us stories of how they listened to the radio, and you're like, and it was like, you kind of almost didn't believe it. You know, like, what, you were listening to the game or whatever, a talk show on the radio, there's no TV. But that's kind of how the younger guys treat and look at us when you tell them some of these stories, like, no way. You know, like, well, like, bro, there's not, like, you seeing a dude in a purple belt, you're like, whoa, that guy's a purple belt? No way. But a black belt was like, holy crap. You know, like, this is,
Right.
you know, it's like your guitarist and Eddie Van Halen walks into the room.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah. So there's such a wealth of knowledge. So let's fast forward a bit. I don't want to fast forward too much. Let's fast forward to where you're cornering and coaching
Yeah.
people, Jason. Finish up a little bit more on clinch. Like, can you say a little bit more about like takedowns and clinch? You know, sport jiu-jitsu people we're pulling guard, we're doing judo, we're doing foot sweeps. We don't really do over under. We don't really do clinch in
Yeah.
sport jiu-jitsu. But what do you think the role of clinch is for Brazilian jiu-jitsu these days?
Well, it's funny because I just got back from No-Gi Worlds in December, and we spent a lot of time in clinch. And honestly, just from a conditioning standpoint, you know, and that was all Gus's baby. You know, Gus was like, here's what I see that we need to work on, like to make sure that you got the gas tank to do it. And sports jiu-jitsu clinch, I mean, still, like, it's just different because there's no wall, you know, and then you can't crack them, you know. But I'm not trying to get to the over under as much. Whereas, like in MMA, I was telling the guys today, or in real life, right? If you got someone, I truly believe it's a severely underestimated area of the game. It's, if there's a wall there, or say, take from a defensive grappling standpoint, because there's a lot of things that I use from the clinch from my MMA days, especially in no-gi, like that I'm just like, it's really important. But then in real life, you got guys that think they're the toughest striker in the planet or best jiu-jitsu player in the planet. But if your clinch game's trash, right? Say you can't get this guy down, what I consider a serious 15 seconds. Good luck, right? And it's a place I'm really comfortable fighting at. And especially if I got a wall, I tell guys all the time, I'm like,
If
I
you do
was a
the incline
striker.
combat, with the incline, the pit, maybe
Yeah.
more people will utilize that.
I think it's underused. I think we'll probably see that though, especially as you get more of these higher level wrestlers, because a lot of these guys got the itch, they're all just like us, they want to compete. There's nothing, in my opinion, there's only upside to competing, like regardless of how old you are. And I think there's a big thing that I see, a big chatter, all the time on jiu-jitsu. I follow, I'm I'm on a lot of the same ones you are. I'm like, oh, Saban's already there. He said this or that, But a lot of the chatter about a hobbyist versus competitor. And I think you can be both, right? Like it's like, no, most guys aren't that 25-year-old freaking competitor, but not everyone's just a hobbyist where you just want to do jiu-jitsu in the gym. Most people fall in the middle, and there's nothing wrong with grabbing a few tournaments per year. What's going to happen? Oh, wait, you're going to instantly focus on all your bad areas, right? Your good areas are going to get better. Oh, and then your conditioning instantly tightens up, right? Okay, let me set that beer down. Let me put the pizza down and eat some chicken and rice or whatever you're eating. All the things. You're going to study more. Watching now, we got all you can eat buffet videos, just BTT alone. Gus has got all his stuff on there. There's a ton of stuff from Morello and Diego out there. So you have all these ways to study, but it motivates you. I also think it's important to compete because it creates that discipline, which is good. For me personally, it's bled into other areas of my life.
Mhm.
But I just love the juices that you get from competing. I still get nervous and that feeling, and I got to lock in. Now the nerves are nothing like MMA nerves, like MMA nerves are
It's
like
another level.
every single fight. I'm just back
When you
there
have
going,
the cage closed behind you, it's
yeah, I
another
remember
level.
being back there and you're getting close and Breaker come up, 4 more fights, and then there's gonna be intermission, and then you're up and you're like, dude, this is happening. And no matter how many times I did it, I always had that feeling like, why do I do this? This is like,
Mm,
why do I
mm.
put myself through this emotional headache? And then you go out there and you start your opponent, and part of the fight, I'm thinking, I'm probably gonna take some time off and all these things. And then you go out there and beat this dude. Everyone's going crazy. And then promoters like, hey, we got a fight card coming up, next month. Talk to Breaker. I'd love to be on it, It's funny how that is. Like, and
Mm.
you're stuck in it. But I think a lot of these grapplers, like these old wrestlers that are solid, are going to bleed more over into the sport as time continues to go by. Jiu-jitsu is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And you're probably going to see, as we're already seeing so much wrestling already, I think it's going to get more, especially guys get clever to those walls and start adding some of their tricks in there. And that's
Yeah.
going to be cool.
Yeah. So even in the meantime, what I'm emphasizing with students more lately is the pummeling, the over under
Yeah,
against the cage or in space. That is top half guard. That is top and bottom half guard. Is
100%.
all, getting double underhooks. If you're getting double underhooks from top half guard, you're gonna pass them. If you
Yeah,
get double underhooks in your mount, you're good to go, right? So if you're in knee shield and you're trying to pass, they call it the row drag now, but like just getting that underhook, right? Learning to pummel for the underhook, learning to use your head for
yeah,
position, dominate head position. It's just like against the clinch when you just put yourselves on the ground, getting your dominating your head position with your underhook
yeah,
from on bottom or top half guard. That's the fight. So yeah, if you want to improve your jujitsu on the floor, try doing clinch rounds
yeah, without a
over
doubt.
under. Yeah, yeah.
And the reason why I think a reason why a lot of people don't do it, for one, the wrestler is not as prevalent as he once was, right? Like a lot of guys are going directly to jujitsu. And so, like my generation of guys, like we used to have 24 odd fighters and most of them were wrestlers. And people were like, Pittman, your takedown defense is good. I was like, well, I had, it was like, I did a lot of drowning, getting taken down, by guys. Here I am, the owner of the gym, getting taken down by everybody until one day I wasn't, and I spent a lot of time with Martindale. He showed me a lot of tricks. He was national champion in college wrestling. And all his stuff was really easy, so between Breaker, Martindale, they're the biggest influences on me as far as like MMA wrestling, specifically clinch stuff. And then I started figuring stuff out. Like I was telling the guys earlier, every tie-up that I use or that I used in MMA gave me an option, almost like football, we can do a run play option, right? Or we can run or pass, I should say. Like I could either take you down or I could strike there. And so most of the tie-ups that I use, I can knee you, punch you, or I can reserve the right to take you down. And I can knee you, punch you, body, head in most of the tie-ups that I like. But I agree 100%. The clinch, learning how to clinch on the feet. And the other thing that you were talking about, the head placement, like I'll pin my head in guys' jaws. I got to get a little bit better about that on the ground. Pat is like, you roll Pat. That's what he loves to do that. Like if he's going to pass your guard and you think you're good and then bang, here comes his head. You're like, oh my God, I got to deal with this, So then I'm just on to my next escape because I'm screwed in that position with him sometimes. But I think the head placement is really important. The over-under tie, like we got to keep it alive. I'm going to start doing it more and more and more in my classes as well as my privates because, man, like not only from a initiate grappling standpoint, but it's a good defense if you're getting outstruck, like your defense can be great, but I mean, sooner or later the guy's going to clip you. I got pretty good D, or it did when I was fighting, and them little gloves find their ways in there. And sooner or later, you better clinch this guy up or he's going to whop, catch you with one, ring your bell. And, and that's the beginning of the end. So I think it's important, even if you're using it as a defensive mechanism, to do that. And then just the conditioning of it as well. There's no bad thing about understanding the over under, in my opinion.
Yes. So we did some technique talk. Let's talk coaching and being an older grappler. So
this is water, by the way, not beer.
How old are you this year, Jason?
I turned 53 October.
Okay.
So this next one's going to be 54.
Yeah.
Which is crazy to say. It's like, why do we end up here?
So what are some things that you're noticing and learning as an over 50 grappler?
Technique wise, or what do you mean?
Yeah, just both. Yeah.
Well, so I'll say this, right? From the age standpoint, it's understanding, like, I think a lot of guys think that, oh, you're too old, you're too old. You don't have it anymore when you reach your 50s. And I think that's wrong. And anybody who, like, if I'm fresh and we're going, I probably don't feel like a 50-something-year-old. I certainly don't act like one, but I think that people listen to all the back noise. Oh, you're older. You gotta knock that crap off. And I don't believe that's true, but you gotta be more conscious of all the things, right? Your prep. You can't just hop on the mat and go we see our young guys like Sebastian, right? He can walk in there and just go. He's 18, 19, no big deal. Older guy, you got to get in a little earlier, stretch out, warm up. I love all our warm-ups that we do pre-class. I think that's important. I believe weight training is important, and again, you're not training like a bodybuilder, but like Ryan Achenbach over at Valley Strength, all his stuff that he has us do is time under tension. It complements, it talks to our jiu-jitsu. Our leg stuff now, we're going a little bit, heavier weight, lighter rep, and it's just a different hit. That's why, like today, I need a wheelchair because we did that yesterday. But I think all that building yourself up, as far as the weights, there's a lot of, there's argument back and forth the weights, but you look at any athlete, however old they are, like even these golfers now are lifting, tennis players lift, everyone's lifting. There's so many different ways to lift weights. I truly believe lifting weights is super important, especially as an older grappler.
How many times a week are you getting in to see
I
Brian?
get 2 with Ryan, and then I get what I call a workaround by myself. And it's just, that one's like after jiu-jitsu, like right now I'm just kind of working on, getting an extra chest day in there. I was doing farmer walks and shrugs, which that really helps with neck strength. But now that we've switched to, we've added deadlifts with the actual deadlift bar, the grips are on the side. So tall guys like me, no back problems with that. It's 100% all the muscles you need to work. Now that we're doing that checks more than the boxes that the farmer walks were doing. So I switched that other day to something else. I just kind of like, the weights for me, is, how it is. Some days you got some hard rolls in and you need to hit the weights, just kind of lube them joints back up a little bit. It doesn't have to be a
Mm,
death workout. Usually go shorter reps on Monday, but I've been feeling really good about that, so to answer your question, I've definitely learned that. I've learned recently, it's cutting alcohol out. I knew it was inevitable. And like anybody's watching this knows that your boy likes to drink and kick it, but it's just the two don't talk to each other anymore. I've started feeling probably the past year, definitely last 8 months, feeling more of the achies in the joints. And I know my body really well. When you're, from fighting and jiu-jitsu and all the things I've done for the last 20 years now as a competitor, I know my body really well. And I'm like, that's for sure because I drank last night. And it's not like a hangover, but you can feel the joints. And I mean, it's not any good, so I'm just kind of getting away from that. And I feel like I 5x'd my jiu-jitsu game as far as my
uh,
movement, my cardio,
yeah.
and not only the physical side, the mental side, right? Everyone knows I like to go to north south and get to some of these positions that I like, for setups to here to there, where before I'd see two options, now I'm seeing four every time.
Mm,
And it's because I think my brain's clearer and, and mind you, I didn't drink every single day, but I started reading about it only took me 53 years to start reading it on how bad it is for you. And honestly, being older, I want every freaking hack I can get, because
mm,
like I started thinking about it, I'm like, I'm lifting and teaching and doing jiu-jitsu 8 to 10 hours a week. So that's the main thing I'm doing. So why wouldn't I do that at my best, where I
mm,
can feel the best? And so I think that's a cheat code. Staying ultra hydrated is a cheat code. Making sure you're taking the right vitamins. Oh, and then the big one, older grapplers and just dudes in general. Get your freaking annual checkups, guys. You know how many
mm,
guys that I know through work, through the gym, through friends that don't get an annual checkup and get their blood work? It's
mm.
probably like 75% of dudes I talk to. Oh, maybe.
Right.
What? And I'm
Yeah.
used to it from getting your annual fight checkup. So I just kept doing it. And then so you got to make sure, oh, hey, do you need a little bit more vitamin D? Are you needing to up your B12? Are you taking a multi? Are you eating enough vegetables? Where are your protein levels at?
Mm,
As older grappler, from a physical standpoint, all that's important. If your cardio ain't good, there's a million hacks on that. Get on that assault bike. It's not sexy. No one wants to hear that. People think that this is a hack, but it's not a cheat code, right? You want
mm,
your cardio better? I got a hack for you, but it ain't going to be an easy cheat code. Hop on that
mm.
assault bike. All you got to do is pick up a 5 to 7 minute round after your training, sprint for 30, jog for 30, sprint for
You do
30, jog
intervals.
for 30. Yeah.
Mm,
And
mm,
I do that before every tournament and it totally helps me. So
mm,
I've noticed these things and then the rest, making sure like I'm a pretty keep my training on. I tell my kids, I showed my daughter the other day, I said, baby, look, like, cause I'm very, I want them to make sure that they keep an organized daily schedule. Right.
mm,
And all my jujitsu, it's all plugged in there. Go to Gus's class, train with Pat, blah, 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 this. Lift with Ryan. It's all on there. Coach this class. Da, 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 da.
mm.
All that's on there. So
It's on the calendar, so you don't have
all
to
on
just
my calendar
think
is
about,
there.
"Am I gonna do this?" It's
Yeah.
already
It's just no,
pre-decided.
it is what it is. But there's certain days as an older grappler
Mm,
where it's just you're feeling busted up and you got to know that. And I know that feeling personally for myself from MMA. You get those days like, man, I just, normally I take one day off. Maybe I need another. Maybe I need 2 more days. Right. And
mm,
that's okay. And I've noticed doing that has been huge. And it's weird. It's like you think about when you break a bone, it's a 6 week cycle for it to heal. So as you're in your training 6 week cycle, I started noticing, I don't know, finally figured it out like 3, 4 years ago, like, oh, wait a
mm.
minute. At about the end of the 6 week training regime that I do, because I train probably 6 days a week. And a lot of those days there's doubles with the weights and jujitsu and going, oh, I'm getting to the end of this 6 week cycle and I'm feeling a little busted up. Okay. Yeah. I need to take a couple extra days off.
You're still training like a competitor. 6 days, more than and you're coaching, you're doing privates.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
crazy, man.
you're staying active.
It's crazy. But it's weird. I talk to Gus about it all the time. I'm happiest in the gym. Like that's
Mm,
when was the last time you went to Happy Valley and not left in a great mood? I've been in terrible moods. I got a client that's freaking out or whatever. And I go to the gym and I'm like just euphoria. even after
Yeah.
coaching too. Like I'm getting, as I'm in coaching more and more and more, I've been coaching for 20 years, but Jiu-Jitsu is different, right? It's just, I get such a euphoria off it, man.
Yeah.
So
That's
all
awesome.
that, the push pull, as I call it, right? Push hard, pull back. But as far as the technical side of it, they always say, and you've heard it in the black belt, oh, the black belt's back to the beginning. I don't really view it like it's back to the beginning. I think it's just you're noticing the fine, at brown belt, after you start wearing that brown for a while and it's starting to look a little tattered and everything like that. You kind of, and for me, I just go on like, okay, yeah, I've seen all the positions, most of them, you know what I mean? Like 80% of like our big major positions and, side control attack, side control escapes, back, blah, 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 all the normal things. And then I started noticing the little stuff. And then when I hit black belt I don't know what it is, I don't know. They all say it and it's true. It was kind of like every little thing I'm noticing, and it could be a move I've seen a million times, or I didn't notice. Like the other day, like, Hodger Gracie's like X choke that he does from mount, Gus was showing that, right? I'm seeing it a lot, but there was a little detail that Gus showed me that I don't know. Apparently I didn't notice it before, but it was a big detail. And I was like, oh, and I always talk to Gus about that. I mean, Gus loves to talk about jits. And so I was like, dude, that's crazy. And me and Pat, every single time I go over there on Saturdays, there's always something. And so that's the longer that I've been in it, and especially at black belt, it's just every day. Even like new guys, or you know what I mean? Not necessarily brand new, but like some of our blues or purples even, that they got a game that they like, and you're like, that's weird. I ain't never seen that, So
Right.
keeping an open mind to it, like I'm super open minded to it. No, you ain't gonna see me inverting. I'm not that open, but yeah,
Yeah.
but it's just I'm just so intrigued by it. It's the ultimate jiu-jitsu is such an addiction, it's crazy. I mean,
Yeah. Yes,
you're a true
absolutely.
addict yourself.
Obsession. Yeah. So for the last section of this interview, Jason, I want to ask you about teaching beginners, men, and especially teaching women, because I know you're teaching women, and you're also doing self-defense classes.
Right.
So is that cool? Talk about that?
We talk about any
Yeah.
I'm an open book, man.
Yeah.
So let's start with the ladies. I think, for one, I think jiu-jitsu is awesome for men, women, children, everything like that. I would say the thing that sets us apart at BTT is that we recognize that the females there's not as many women as there are men, in any gym pretty much for the most part. And so I personally do everything I can do to make them feel as comfortable as possible. Um, and then kind of get them going, right? So they kind of get their sea legs underneath them. And it's important to kind of preface their experience before the experience. If it's a younger guy,
Say more about that.
right? So before they're rolling, I'm just telling, hey, look, this is the kind of, it's an up close personal game. It's okay to say tap. If you feel something weird, say tap. That's not a problem at all. I say before we do live rounds for every one of my classes, hey, remember, there's no UFC title, there's no ADCC title at the end of this thing. So for the ladies, making sure that they're feeling confident. If you're new in my class, I usually don't let you roll for probably 3 weeks. Kind of want you to go, hey, can I get in there? I want them to kind of just sit back, especially for the women. And
For when
then
they're ready
when they're
and
ready,
feeling
when they're, hey,
confident. Okay.
coach, I feel comfortable. And fortunately for my class, we consistently have probably 3 to 5 different women in there. And so, but then the other thing is I'm very, very cautious of how I match them when they roll. And that's for everybody, but the women, that's a whole different, it's like, hey, look, I don't want a female grappler, and women they're more resilient than dudes a lot of times. God, like, this guy did this and that to me. Women will sit there and they won't say anything. They won't see them because they didn't want to say anything,
Yeah.
and
Right.
and
Right.
so I make sure, like, hey, like, and that's part of coaching and understanding, who's in your class. I know, like Derek, he's kind of like the most senior man in my class, and Derek, he can roll with the ladies and smooth sailing and kind of coaches them through, and that's what I love about him. And so I'll send them there. There's other gals that are a good competitive matchup once they get kind of that level. I'll let them get that in too. But every round I'm hovering low. because you don't really, it takes a minute for people to really appreciate the jiu-jitsu experience, and
Mm.
one bad thing in the beginning can kind of blur their vision, of like what's
Uh,
really the end game
like
in it,
turn them
of
off
it.
to it.
Yeah, so we want to make sure that there's no problems, right? And most of our people are really good, but sometimes guys, especially dudes, don't know that they're going balls to the wall. And so, our job as coaches is to make sure that you're not in that environment, right? You're not, no, that should have never happened type thing, right? Like, nope, you're not rolling. I see, and sometimes there's two gals that I know they're going to kill each other. No, you guys aren't rolling. You're going to with him, you're going to with her, whatever. That's kind of how I do it. Now, onto the older dudes, older guys, you kind of protect them from themselves, right? They want to go hard because they think that's what they're supposed to do. And I remember starting out, but I didn't start out in my 50s, but I remember starting out and a lot of them want to come in, use the muscle and all
Even if you're
that.
not a former athlete,
Yeah.
a lot of guys will be kind of in that mindset.
Yeah. They think like, oh, this means I gotta, and obviously, I joke with Gus all the time. I'm like, treat white belts like home invaders if I'm rolling with them. Get them and hold them down, hold them there till the cops come. Cops come in as the bell ring, and like, all right, good. Usually with newer guys, and they're really spazzy.
Yeah, yeah.
Get to a strong position, gas them. Older dudes, keeping them, protecting them from themselves. Hold them back for 3 weeks, just like I would a female, and until they're wanting to get in, and very cautious of who they roll with. And then, especially for guys, making sure that in the beginning they're taking their rounds off. Watching that. You're gonna take this one off, bro.
You don't have to kill yourself.
Yeah,
You don't have to die on these mats here.
yeah. It's not, and I think a lot of guys they don't
Yeah.
understand, that this thing's a marathon, man. It's not a
Mm.
sprint, and, there's a couple of guys that, and the beauty of us is all as coaches talk about each guy, if our classes are overlapping with students, we
Mm.
make sure and like, hey man, I'm seeing it. How many times do you train this week? Okay,
Oh, we
cool.
know
I'll
where
watch
we're
it.
at with where
Yeah.
students are at. Yeah,
Where
yeah.
they're at with their skills, where they're at with their
Mm,
training this week. Hey, he was saying
mm,
his elbow was a little jacked up. Uncle, hey, bro, I was talking to Gus. He said your elbow's a little flared up. Oh, yeah, I think I can go. We're going to have you just drill today. And we're keeping them alive in the game. Sometimes mandating days off to guys. Take tomorrow off. You think so? Yep, I know so.
mm,
Takes one to know one, right?
mm.
So yeah, with those guys, making sure we're educating them on how to train and then their care, right? My rule of thumb is if I got something flared up, ice it the first few days. If it continues, I call Dr. Dan, or I get a massage. Now Kiki's licensed as a massage therapist. I mean, we got her now, but get your work. So many times I talk to people, oh, my shoulders were messed up for 4 weeks. What have you done? You've iced it? No. You think it's going to magically go away? But a lot of times they don't know, right? So we just got to, I tell them that, making sure they're taking care of their bodies and all that stuff. And then letting guys know it's okay if you're banged up to just come in and watch, because as well as I do, jiu-jitsu is super cerebral. I mean, I've gotten a lot out of like, I've been injured or maybe, I call it load management. It's a load management day where I'm like,
Mm,
dude, I'm feeling it. I'm just going to come in and watch throw my gi on and
mm,
help a little bit, watch what's going on and just,
mm.
take it in. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Right,
And I think a lot of
right.
guys think that, they look weak or whatever. No, you look smart. The guy that's weak is, in my opinion, is the dumb guy who didn't listen to his body and try to keep it, just keep going and going and going.
Right. Yeah. That's good. That's good, Jason. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about like it doesn't seem like it's a regular thing or a frequent thing, but you've for the past few years I noticed that you've been teaching women's self-defense. Can you tell us about how that started and where you're at with that?
Yeah. So myself and Marcus Daniels started out with me, but him and I started a company called Elite Personal Defense, and it was just because I'm in the mortgage industry, and I keep getting asked about doing self defense classes like all the time. And so
Mm,
I was like, all right, we got one coming up this month actually down at the coast. So we started doing that, and we get women and men in there. But like I tell a lot of dudes, man, like most dudes aren't as tough as they think they are, right? Like they don't like, and I'm not trying to break my arm, pat myself on the back, but any of my fighter buddies on here will know that they would be surprised how quickly they'd get efficiently taken out by a trained guy, you know? Like it's not even it's like, an adult to a baby, like it's just nothing. And so I tell a lot of guys they got to check their egos too. Like just because you played football 25 years ago in high school doesn't mean nothing. What does that have to do with fighting, or a conflict situation?
If I remember correctly, there were some realtors being assaulted, like in the news a few years ago.
Yeah, and I don't think we've had, fortunately, too much local, but I mean, I started looking it up, and there is nationally, there's a lot of things that are happening because the agent is saying, "Hey, I'm doing an open house at said property address," and
Mm,
creeps come creeping in, And
mm.
and once I've read a couple where unfortunately, some female real estate agents were killed,
Oh man.
where they
Yeah.
found them bound in the basement type deal.
Oh
And
man.
so I talk a lot about the awareness in there. I did an open house with a realtor friend of mine probably 7-8 years ago, and there was a guy, a homeless, it looked like a guy was living in the ADU in the back, kind of like a mother-in-law suite. And
Hmm.
there's stuff there, but no one was there. And
Yeah.
every time I do an open house, I walk through. I want to check the house, but I check, right? I don't know. It's just
You
I'm
check the
paranoid.
property.
I check everything, every room. And so me and the agent were on the deck, and the guy kind of came out, and he had him been hiding in there somewhere. It was weird.
Mm,
And he tried to tell us that, oh yeah, yeah, the sellers have got me watching the house. I'm like, no, they don't. I knew they were out of town. All these things, right? And so it kind of escalated. This guy was, kind of pushing back, verbally. And I was dressed up, and I said, "Don't let the slacks and the freaking button shirt fool you, buddy. Grab your
mm,
stuff and get out of here." And I think he felt the vibe, like it wouldn't have been a good day for him.
mm,
And I wouldn't have
mm.
pieced him up or nothing like that. You just take him down and gift wrap him. And that's probably pretty much it. But that kind of thing can happen in those environments. So I talk a lot about the awareness in those. Marcus and I do, and then we show kind of basic techniques like that will stick. I try to stick it in the DNA. But my disclaimer for every class is the actual air parentheses self-defense I don't necessarily believe in, even though that I teach self-defense. And what I mean by that is I don't believe in the mentality of you think that you can come in
Mm,
for an hour and a half, 2-hour class and be super proficient at these techniques in an
mm,
extremely high stress environment, right?
mm,
Because it was fight, flight, or freeze. And, I mean, before a fight, I mean, I've trained for years and years. And 2, 3 weeks before a fight, I don't want to learn a new move. You ain't showing me nothing new. I want to do
mm,
the things I've done. I've got zillion reps on for a
mm,
jiu-jitsu tournament. Don't show me some crazy,
mm.
thing. No,
Yeah.
I ain't gonna do that at all, dude.
It's
Like
what's hardwired into you through
what's hardwired
repetition
into
and
you.
training.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so that's our disclaimer every time we do a class
Mm,
is that, hey man, if anything heaven forbid, you remember how to throw that right hand we showed you, or you remember how to grab your wrist back, blast this full with the elbow, or whatever. But do not think that this is enough. If anything, this is the gateway drug, if you will, for you to find your local BTT gym or your local jiu-jitsu gym, I should say, or your local boxing, Muay Thai, what I consider today's martial arts. Unfortunately, a lot of the old school martial arts stuff. I do believe there's still some very good aggressive karate out there, yeah, and there's some good judo out there. It's with really good judo. Like these guys will dump you on your head. Any of that, like, not to diss the Taekwondo community, but I mean, all you got to do is look on YouTube, Taekwondo, Kung Fu, and watch those guys against some guys been training MMA for like 3 months get beat down every time. What's the other
mm,
one? Aikido. It's all a colossal waste of your time.
mm,
So yeah, we kind of do it like that and just try to get people feel empowered. Our last class down there at the coast a few months back was really good because everyone was just they wanted more. They were so interactive and they got it, because we teach, just the basic strikes. But my belief is instead of showing you 20 moves, we're going to show you 4 or 5 and drill the crap out of them.
mm,
So you at
mhm.
least we're at least kind of getting it in the DNA.
Like getting that basic toolbox.
Basic toolbox. Here's your hammer. Here's your wrench. Here's your screwdriver. Stick with those.
And hopefully catch the bug to want to build on it and
Without a
develop
doubt.
some training.
Without a doubt. And I think too, the other thing that I didn't touch on, but I think about a lot is, and no one really talks about it, we feel it is the mental health
Mm,
portion of our arts or our sport.
yeah.
Like it's so, I don't know how you would put it, man. it's the one thing that I like, no matter what's going on in my life, I have. We all, I'm married with kids and have a profession and, got a lot of things going on. And sometimes, things just happen and they make you have a bad day. But like jujitsu,
Mm,
like no matter what, man, you go there, even if you're the day it's the nail, right? There's
mm,
days I go and I roll a pat and I'm just getting rolled up. And I'm like, that was awesome. Oh my God.
mm.
It was great. Let's go again. Or you have
Yeah.
off days or whatever. I'm always just
Mm.
so happy that I went in there. And
Yeah. Shout
not just
shout
the
out to
physical, but
Professor
mentally.
Pat Spate. You've referenced him a few times. He's the instructor at BTT Damascus, and just got his, was it
Fourth,
fourth degree
fourth
black
degree
belt
black belt. He's been
last
wearing
month.
that thing, I think 14, 15 years now.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the crazy thing is I told him the other week, I said, dude, you're getting better. Like, I've rolled a pat a zillion times and, I'd like to think that I'm getting better myself, but he's getting better, which is cool to see. He's
Yeah.
not
That's
armchair
motivation
coach.
for you.
Yeah. I
Keep
go in
going.
there. I go there to get, you need to always get that like push. That's why I try to roll with all our black belts anytime they're in the room. And the other
Mhm.
guy, our new guy, Rob, he's legit too. Have you rolled with him yet?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, he's legit and a super
Rob
cool
from
guy.
Alaska.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Solid
So
dude.
awesome. So Jason, let's wrap things up. But what classes are you teaching at BTT Happy Valley, and how can people connect with you about self defense or private lessons?
Yeah. So I'm at BTT Happy Valley. Pretty consistent. I rarely miss my classes. Tuesdays and Thursdays from 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. We have that 1 week trial. So when people are new, come in there. We have loaner gis. I think people are really intimidated about going in there and being humiliated, and that's not going to happen.
No.
We're going to show you the basic moves. And like I said, we're going to hold you back. You're not going to roll live. You're going to be like itching. You want it. Come on, coach, put me in type thing. And jiu-jitsu, I believe, will truly change people's lives. I mean, we see it every single time, right? But yeah, I'm there Tuesday and Thursday. And then every other Saturday, I teach our striking class from 11 to 12. 11 a.m. to noon. And it's kind of who's there. We work on a little bit of everything in that one. Like today I showed clinch and how to beat guys up in the clinch, striking in the clinch, which near and dear to my heart. I love that. But so I got that one. And then as far as privates and stuff, people can, hit me Instagram or text me, we can get that going. I do privates. They can be semi-privates if they want, bring a friend or whatever. A lot of times that helps people. And in there, I do most of my privates right now are striking, but I mean, whatever you want to do, if you're wanting to do jiu-jitsu. I truly believe though, if you're doing jiu-jitsu privates, you should be part of the masses. And then you're doing your privates just to tighten things up. If
Okay.
you're doing just jiu-jitsu
Not
privates,
not just private lessons
yeah, you're
is
not
is,
gonna
is what you think.
get it. Some of the MMA stuff though, I can definitely tailor, but like overall jiu-jitsu from, white belt on up, you really need to be in the classes and absorb, 1 day a week of drilling is not going to cut it as far as that goes, in my opinion. But yeah, I do those usually on the weekends. Occasionally I can fit you in, on a Friday afternoon or something like that. But yeah, I'm definitely, open to all those.
Right. Thanks for your time, Jason. It was fun to talk about the old days and to remember our coaches, Rob Follis, remember Evan Tanner,
Yeah.
and
I
Greg
want to,
Piper.
I'll conclude with that. Like
Mm,
Robert Follis was an amazing coach, just a really good dude. Didn't, had no idea that he was going through it like he was. It still like seems unbelievable to me that he's not here. But he was a good coach of mine early on. Crawford was a longtime boxing coach of mine through my fight career. A lot of the stuff, a lot of the combos that I like came from him. A couple other, I've had other boxing coaches as well. Another guy that I used a lot, not just from the coaching aspect, but sparring, was John Heath. And then Dale. I can't remember Dale's last name, but we'd get together back. I was thinking about this the other day. I would spar when I was active, probably at least 20 rounds a week. So Tuesday and Fridays we'd spar. And those guys would come out, like, we'd punch each other, kick each other, meet each other so many times between me, John, and Dale. But those guys are really good strikers. And I always wanted to be, train with the best guys. So those guys, obviously, shout out to Gus. Without Gus, I probably wouldn't have got back into jiu-jitsu, to be honest. When I got done fighting, I didn't want to do jiu-jitsu. I didn't want to hit mitt. I was just, because I'd fought for 10 years, had
mm,
16 fights, had another probably 15 We've had about another 15 or so camps where fights didn't happen. So figure my body went through
Man.
about 30 some odd training camps and about 16 MMA fights, and I just didn't want to do any of it. I was just lifting, and I'm about 235, 240. Got pretty, built, but I felt like crap. I felt like the Tin Man. Couldn't move around. My lower back was killing me. Gus talked me into doing. You should do this jiu-jitsu tournament, bro. I said, I'll do the next one in Cali. Oh, that's where this one is. There'll be guys in your age in your bracket. It's Pans. I go, there's a lot of guys in this Pans thing, and I'd never done a jiu-jitsu tournament. I was a purple belt. Had the fights, but never did a tournament. And I took second, come back to the gym. Everyone's deep half sweeping me.
Second in Pans.
I do, I had zero. I was totally surviving off MMA, right?
That's
and
awesome.
in the gi. And so I was like, I got to figure this out. So 100% that's Gus. And then Pat, staying on me all this time and still just staying on me. And then obviously all our training partners, love rolling with Dr. Dan, love rolling with Gus, love rolling with Rob, love rolling with you when we see each other. It's such a finesse. Love rolling with Bree, all our black belts, man. Like, yeah, it's just awesome. People are missing out. They need to do jiu-jitsu.
Go. All right. Thank you, Jason, for your time. We'll see you on the mats.
Yes, sir.
Plus, all right. So I'm going to stop this one, Jason, and then I'm going to put the button up, take the hat off, and then do you still have time to talk about mortgage?
I'm gonna throw. I'll do the same thing. I'll be right back.
Yeah. So I'm going to email you a new link.
Got it.
All right. We'll see you soon.
All right.